christiangeekcentral.com.
Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. If you're into video games, you're probably aware of the recent controversy surrounding microtransactions and more specifically loot boxes. I've got some thoughts I want to share related to the subject, and I apologize if you notice me reading. I just wanted to gather my thoughts a little bit before sharing them. A number of full-price PC and console video games that were released recently, including Middle-earth: Shadow of War and Star Wars Battlefront 2, feature in-game packages filled with random items or bonuses that will aid your progress in the game. And these you can buy these loot boxes. They've been compared to the booster packs sold for collectible card games like Magic the Gathering, in that you use real-world money to buy random in-game content that can then be used to help you along in the game. Accusations have been passionately flying right and left as gamers and games media personalities verbally lash out at those they believe are responsible for preying upon children, gambling addicts, and players in general. The big question that's being asked or attempted to be answered by many as well is, who is at fault here? Is it the developer for how they specifically go about implementing loot boxes in the game design? Is it the publisher at fault for mandating that loot boxes be included to begin with? Is it the player for a lack of self-control? Well, right now, I'm not looking to weigh in on the question of fault. I think that there are a lot of folks out there that are more equipped to do that, and certainly a lot more that have been talking about it already, so I'm going to go down a little bit of a different track. And what I want to talk about isn't intended as a counter-argument to any attempts at figuring out who or what is at fault here. I think if there is some predatory or immoral actions going on in the design of these games, then it's good for it to be brought to light. Now, I may question how some people go about shedding light on the guilty, but that's a different topic, and one that we'll actually be getting into in a more broad and general sense soon as we continue studying the book of Ephesians. So I hope you'll stay tuned for that. I want to talk about how we, as Christian geeks specifically, should respond when something in our entertainment disappoints or frustrates us. There's a lot of anger being expressed over loot boxes right now, and there is such a thing as righteous anger on behalf of the victim. So I don't want to eliminate that as a possibility here, but even when people will kind of like label their anger as righteous and stuff, with all the anger that's flying around right now, most of the anger I've seen being expressed over loot boxes, I mean, I've got my doubts about how righteous it actually is, regardless of what they say, may be motivating them. It seems that most of the anger is the result of individuals being frustrated that their personal enjoyment of something is being disrupted by an element that they strongly dislike. Now, I'm in support of customers communicating negative feedback to creators and to publishers. We have a long way to go in learning how to do that with both honest clarity and compassionate grace, but negative feedback itself has an important place in creativity. Hard as it's been for me to hear, it's shaped my own work, and I think for the better. So I think it's good for fans to communicate dissatisfaction with creators. It's the anger coming with that negative feedback, or the verbal attacks, the insults, whether in your face or just kind of like passive aggressive superiority and stuff. There's these attitudes and words and stuff that seem to be fueled by the anger around this whole situation, and it's that anger that concerns me a bit. I wonder how misplaced or disproportionate that anger is, considering that the far greater problems in the world that we don't vent about on Facebook. I mean, what does it say about me? This is something I've done. When I rant for 3 pages about how much I hated the DC Comics miniseries Final Crisis. If you hunt down, I posted an article of that. I ranted about it on the Spirit Blade Underground podcast years ago. But even while I was doing that, what does it say that I was doing that, but I don't even think about the women who are daily being objectified in entertainment media or sold in sex trafficking? Children are daily being neglected or abused by parents or other family members, and they're being scarred for life because of it. My own selfishness causes me to neglect loving and serving the people that are around me. These are all huge injustices. This is not the way the world should be. So these are all huge injustices with long-term impact. So why am I getting a funk over like a movie letting me down, you know? I think a lot of times when we find ourselves getting angry or genuinely like bummed out, you know, like because of disappointments in entertainment, you know, I mean, like put in a funk for like the rest of the day or something, that can happen, you know. It's happened to me, certainly, you know, where we're really looking forward to something and we got on the hype train and it lets us down, and then we're kind of in a funk and it affects our mood, you know, in the rest of the things we're doing the rest of the day. Or we get, you know, we start kind of getting angry, and just whenever we bring to mind that game or that movie or whatever, that bit of entertainment that really disappointed us, really let us down, you know. I think when we find ourselves there in that headspace, it's because we've placed too much importance on entertainment. We've counted on it to provide something or do something for us that entertainment just isn't meant to provide or do. Maybe that's escape from our problems that we wanted to get from it, or a sense of identity, which maybe is more of almost on a subconscious level, or maybe it's an ever-increasing sensory enjoyment. We're just bored, you know, and we just require greater and greater and more, you know, more fantastic and excellent, you know. We just require that our entertainment constantly be raising the bar, or we just get bored, you know, and we get into a funk or whatever. Or maybe we're looking for the experience of a world and a life that's greater than our own. Maybe we're looking to entertainment for these things, but entertainment just isn't equipped. It's not meant to provide those things. The problem is entertainment only creates a fleeting illusion of fulfilling those desires. It's only temporary relief or distraction from what troubles us. It doesn't deal with the problems in our lives that are troubling us. It provides only a false sense of identity, you know, when we are at the top of the leaderboards in some online game or something like that, or when we get the satisfaction of immersing ourselves in a world where we are empowered, you know. That's just temporary, and it's an illusion. Entertainment has limits and expiration dates in providing pleasure. It can only give us so much pleasure, and the new hotness eventually is the old coldness, you know, no matter how cool and exciting it is. And the worlds and the lives that entertainment presents are only in our imagination. The book of Ecclesiastes describes how the pursuit of pleasure is ultimately vanity. When we try to like go to pleasure and entertainment to satisfy us and to give us a full life, you know, and to get the most out of the experience of living this life, you know, for these decades that we have here. When we go to entertainment or pleasure for that, it's vanity. It's ultimately pointless. It ultimately cannot satisfy. There's an inexhaustible supply of longing that we have for things, and entertainment just can't rise to that challenge. It's easy for me to feel like I need a certain amount of entertainment. You know, talking about, you know, putting entertainment in the wrong place, giving it the wrong sense of proportion, which is what Ecclesiastes is kind of saying is just foolish. You know, it's easy for me to feel like I need a certain amount of entertainment. And I can justify that feeling, and do frequently, by saying that I need to unwind, or I need to rest and recuperate if I'm going to be useful to anyone. You know, if I'm going to do the things that God wants me to do, to give energy to people. When I'm an introvert and I'd rather just be alone, I don't want to invest energy in other people, I don't want to be social or whatever, you know, or whatever God has put in front of me as an opportunity to serve Him and to love others. You know, it almost always takes energy. And so I can say to myself, okay, I can expend that energy, but at some point I need to rest, or I'm going to burn out, and then I won't be any good to God or anyone else, you know. And so I can say to myself, I need to rest. I need this time tonight to recuperate so that I can serve God and do the things He's calling me to tomorrow or later on today or whatever. What's tricky about that is that it's true to some degree. And because it's at least partially true, I can miss it when I make enjoyment of entertainment a higher priority than I should. I can totally miss the fact that I'm doing that. I get stuck in this kind of zoomed in perspective of like, you know, what I'm wanting right now, what I feel like I need right now, instead of the zoomed out perspective we see in Hebrews 13:5. Hebrews 13:5 in the ESV reads, "Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. That's really, that's really significant. Now we might say, oh, it's just the fat cats and the suits, the corporate suits over at publishing companies like EA. They're the ones that love money. I don't love money, But money, most often, I would say, is a means of getting material things that either our bodies need, or probably more often than we are really willing to label them, things that we just want, things that just bring comfort or enjoyment or pleasure, into our lives, and so I think this warning applies to the love of the things, the comforts, the pleasures, the entertainment that money can buy for us, and I think also it even applies to or certainly the book of Ecclesiastes applies to pursuit of pleasure even when it doesn't cost us anything. Because you might say, well, I'm not spending money on my MMO, I'm just, playing it and enjoying it, and then I get angry and it disappoints me. Well, it's still the pursuit of pleasure that ultimately Ecclesiastes says this isn't going to give you ultimately what you really, want in terms of like a full, rich life, So, looking at this verse again, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have, for he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. See, I think this verse recognizes that we go to money to find fulfillment and pleasure and security. And that's why it's relevant for him to respond to that, the writer of Hebrews, by reminding us that we've been promised that God will never leave us or forsake us, because he's the one that we should be going to ultimately for our sense of security, our sense of fulfillment. When you and I give too much priority to entertainment, we actually become slaves to it. This is, we wouldn't think of it that way, but really that is what's happening. This is implied by what Jesus warns regarding our relationship to money. In Matthew 6:24 in the ESV, Jesus is saying here, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. And we can find ourselves, just because we place so much importance and significance on what money can give us and what entertainment can give us, that we make that our priority and it drives everything that we do. So often as geeks, our finances and our emotions get wrapped up and dependent upon how much we enjoy the next hot game, book, movie, or TV show episode. And when that happens, when disappointment in entertainment leads us to like this downcast funk or kind of a stewing anger, I think chances are good that we've fallen into loving something that we shouldn't. And we might say, well, I don't really love this, even though, we say, oh, I love this or whatever, hyperbole really clouds, I think, the discussion here. So it's, that makes things a little bit tricky. But let's look at 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 and 17. In the ESV, it reads, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride in possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. The Greek word for love here means to love dearly or to be contented with. We're not meant to love dearly or look for life contentment in our entertainment. Now, it's great to enjoy our hobbies and our nerdly delights. After all, everything good in life ultimately has its source in God. We should recognize that and thank Him for it when we experience pleasure and enjoyment in entertainment. That's something that it's good for me to remember as I get ready to go see a movie. So I put that out there for you to consider too. When the credits are rolling and you're walking away from a movie you really enjoyed, why not take a moment and thank Yahweh for enabling and bringing about the creativity and all these different people for creating creativity to begin with. Or maybe we could say that's intrinsic to his being, but anyway, that's a theological discussion I won't get into. But anyway, James 1:15 in the ESV says, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. So we should thank Him and praise Him for these things that we enjoy, even that are created by, non-believers, because He is the source of all good things. But if we dearly love our hobbies, if we cling to them and view them as our source of contentment, which will lead to anger and funks that we can get into when we're disappointed by it. When we get that deep into our devotion to our hobbies, we're failing to pursue a love of God. The more we love God, the more we'll see Him as our source of rescue from our troubles instead of video games or movies or whatever it is. We will see Him as our source of identity rather than what we accomplish on leaderboards or what we experience in a simulated world. We will see Him as the source of all sensory enjoyment and praise Him and thank Him for that, and recognize that one day we will get complete and full and rich and, as great as it can be, possibly eternally increasing sensory enjoyment with Him by nature of being in His presence for all eternity. He is the ultimate source of those things now, and He will be the ultimate fulfillment of those things in eternity. And He is the source of a life far greater than what we have now. In pursuing God, we'll increasingly be reminded that this world just falls infinitely short. It's never going to match up to that inexhaustible longing and hunger we have for bigger and greater things. And we'll start to realize as we pursue loving God and understanding who He is and what He has done for us now, what He is doing for us, and what He will do for us in eternity. The more we pursue a love and devotion to Him, we're going to see how this world falls infinitely short, and we're going to recognize that, we really shouldn't expect that much from it. And don't get me wrong, as I said before, I think it's good to give feedback to content creators, and hopefully in a way that is both clear and sensitively compassionate toward them as human beings. We should want all creative types to pursue excellence and integrity, and we should reward and encourage them for doing that. But in the meantime, we should also aim to not be enslaved by our entertainment, so that we have the strength and the freedom to resist a purchase that we may regret or be disappointed by. We can minimize the risk of that happening by waiting for reviews instead of getting on the hype train and feeling like, I gotta have this right now to be a part of the big experience that everyone else is having, and right now, we can wait. We can wait for reviews. We can wait for more information to reduce the risk of disappointment, and especially that can come with committing our limited funds to something, and when entertainment is in its proper place and we are expecting the right things from it as opposed to things that we shouldn't expect from entertainment, when we put entertainment in the right place, then we get all the good without the bad. We get the great experiences without the frustration. It becomes a blessing when it's enjoyable without being a wound when it's not.